The previous program was the Jordan Journal with Howard Jordan, heard Fridays starting at 3 p.m. Stay tuned for State of the Arts NYC coming up. It is now 5 p.m. Stay tuned.
Good evening. This is State of the Arts NYC, where we cover art. And tonight, our theme is When Tension is Greatest, Breakthroughs Come. We are so pleased to have returning with us tonight artist Nari Ward, and he will be joined by Jess Wilcox, who is the director of exhibitions at Socrates. We will be talking about Nari's exhibition. It's an amazing exhibition called G.O.A.T, again, at the Socrates Sculpture Park in Astoria, Queens. Also joining the show is Jenny Sabin. She is the winner of the Museum of Modern Art's PS1 Young Architects Program for 2017. And we have the co-founders of the Brooklyn Clay Tour, Demetria, Clappo, and Nicholas Newcomb, who will be with us live in the studio, and we will then have, as a cap to our program, another museum review from our contributor, Irene Javors, on the Posters and Patriotism exhibition at the Museum of the City of New York. So, welcome so much, Jess and Nari. Are you there, Nari?
Oh, yes. Great, Savona. Thank you for having me.
Oh, great. So, this was a very exciting show for me to see. I saw it yesterday. I went all out to Astoria.
Did you take the ferry?
I didn't. I wish I had. I got a little lost after I took the subway, and I ended up walking all the way from Broadway over to the waterfront. And I said, you know what? I think I should have taken the ferry. That might have been a little bit easier. But once I got there, that was really quite stunning. I hadn't been to Socrates in a long time. So it was the first time I had gone in years. And then to see all of your works there, Nari, they were quite impressive. All of the goats with all of the different pieces that were sort of embedded either from the top or the bottom, with the under chins for all of the goats. The big piece, the large piece, that's the centerpiece.
Right, that the scapegoat.
Yes, that was real. I mean, people were just taking lots and lots of pictures. I saw people coming even after I had gotten there, and I got there pretty reasonably early afternoon. It was just amazing. So, Nari, why don't you tell us a little bit about how this exhibition came about?
Well, yes, I was approached by Jess Wilcox and John Hatfield from Socrates Sculpture Park to basically take the entire 5-acre park, which was in their 30-year history. It was a real honor because that's the first time they had asked one artist to do that. And it was a big responsibility, a big honor, of course, but a big responsibility. And I had to figure out how to do it, how to hold that amount of space and conceptually and visually. And so the goats became the repeated element, and also the acronym, the notion of GOAT as being sort of vernacular acronym, greatest of all time. And in this case, it was greatest of all time again, which was a kind of a nod and a wink to our political environment.
Oh, no, I caught that. I caught that real quick. Yeah, I did.
And the goats were a sort of willing participant in the fact of talking about a kind of male hubris, but also a playful, adventurous character, maybe even overconsumption. Goats have a characteristic of maybe sometimes eating too much, and to a point where they'll even bust their own bellies.
Really?
And
that I did not know.
Yeah, in art history, they're meant to be, they're sometimes portrayed as being a kind of rebellious or maybe a little bit over-sexualized. And so there's a lot of, they're also high achievers. They climb, they're known to climb very high,
mountains.
great heights.
And,
exactly.
yeah.
And they're used a lot in sacrifices. So there are all these components of the goat that I was really intrigued with, trying to engage with, especially in this kind of charged political environment. Mm-hmm. And the main one of male hubris, I thought there was being the greatest of all time again metaphor. I thought this was a really appropriate sort of animal take on that kind of challenge. To both be descriptive about it, but also playful.
Yes, and Jess, we want you to jump in on this because, yes, I read the description, the beautiful pamphlet that's available for people to look at. And when I saw how you were defining hubris, it caught my attention very much because I work with a lot of artists. And once I had to deal with an artist who was told by another creative person that, you're full of, hubris. And it was like, ooh, this is getting kind of ugly up in here. But yeah, but that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with not just a presidential climate that's kind of gotten out of control, but you're getting now all these other people that are getting out of control and feeling that they can say whatever they want and rewrite history the way they want and define things how they want. So tell us, Jess, from the perspective of the institution, how did you guys wanted this show to be seen?
Well, I think hubris is an interesting place to start. And being an outdoor sculpture park, I think one of the great things that Nari did was have a dialogue with the monument in many ways. And although the works don't maybe necessarily completely look like monuments, I think they take on certain aspects of the monument to help us understand what the monument is and what it does. And one of those things that the monument does is sort of inflate hubris and build a sense of identity. So, one of the pieces that I think in the show does that sort of most pointedly is the bipartition bell, which is, for those of you who haven't seen it, you have a couple days left.
Yes, because I know the show ends on September 4th. Yes.
That's right. But I can briefly describe that Nari created this, I think it's, 12-foot diameter bell made of pounded copper with a patina on the outside. So this is a big bell that hangs. And it, you look at the shape and you see, bipartition. It almost is reminiscent of the Liberty Bell that has the split in the middle, but not quite. And actually Nari can tell you what he modeled it off of, which was some goat testicles. So here we're thinking about. Do you want to speak more to that?
It was there's actually a condition that happens in goats where their scrotum is separated, and it's called a kind of bipartition scrotum.
Wow!
And it's meant to. And sometimes the goat herder or the farmer would do it on purpose to sterilize the goat. So it's a very prominent image that stated me. And so I wanted to make this oversized scrotum that when you walk inside, it's a scrotum / bell. And so when you walk inside, there's actually 3 little goat bells that you can ring.
Okay.
So it is meant to be very disappointing because the expectation is totally misplaced. And so that was also part of the idea of making this kind of setting up for one expectation and having something totally another kind of thing happen.
Okay. Now that is a real definition of narcissism because that's what hubris is. It's
big
about
balls.
Yeah. And about, setting up false expectations. So therefore, you get what you want, but others do not get what they think they get. So was that important for you guys when you were thinking about the whole exhibition, Jess?
I mean, I think absolutely. In this political climate, I think how we look at greatness was definitely on my mind, and I believe from conversations that we had, Nari, that was also on your mind as well.
Yeah, and how we choose to quantify things. For instance, that brings me to the Apollo pole piece. It was really one of the first pieces, which is a recreation of the Apollo sign,
right?
The Apollo Theater sign, and it was really and what happens in that piece. When you saw it, it maybe you didn't see it in the daytime. It's harder to see, but it blinks off from being legible as Apollo, the sign, the text, and then also the A and the the A and the L go out, and so it's also says pole.
Yes, I've seen like nighttime images of it where that's what you wanted to do specifically, and tell us why did you want to do this. I kind of know, but I think that would be good for our audience to know.
I think, I was intrigued with the merger of the two sites, one being Socrates Sculpture Park, and kind of with the Greek name. And in my neighborhood, I was immediately searching for what do I know what's Greek, I'm from Harlem, and so the Apollo Theater, and also the fact that the Apollo has this amateur night component, which is a talent contest, and nothing in Socrates is ever permanent. It's always these artists presenting their work, and then and people looking at it and appreciating it or not, and then they would go on to the next one. But I think Jess said it really well, better than I could have, in a way, in one sentence in the book that you mentioned, is that it's this correlation between entertainment and politics, and I think that's what it really captured for me, which is where we are in a lot of ways as well.
Well, just talk about that a little bit, how politics has now turned into entertainment.
I mean, I think you can definitely see that in terms of the idea of, people talk about performance in everyday life. How is someone performing as a leader? I think, when you talk about entertainment and politics, our current president, I think, comes immediately to mind as someone who was very successful in entertainment and was able to, I think, use that as a platform for a political campaign. So there's a sort of, a little bit of an uncomfortable alliance there that I think that I think Nari's playing with and questioning about what does consensus mean too. So I think there's a lot going on in that piece.
Yes.
What was really important for me, Savona, was really having these possibilities. But if you're just coming into the park and there's no need to know all that, in a sense. You could just see it as a displaced Apollo sign, made out of vinyl lettering. So there's an LED version of it. So there's this other moment of repositioning the viewer in some respects, and in whatever experience they have is just another point of entry into themselves or into their knowing of that thing.
Well, I also thought was amazing when I was there was how peaceful the park is. I thought I couldn't believe it. You get this wonderful cool breeze off the East River. Then you have these chairs in different sections of the park. And so I decided to sit down and take everything in. And it was so soothing. And sometimes you could hear the ferry in the backdrop that it almost lulled me completely to sleep. I was like, wow, this is kind of comfortable.
Yeah.
I needed to come back here again. But I was seeing the dynamics between the two, how you're talking about like charged energy. And then you're in this relaxing place, because that can have a different metaphoric aspect to it as well, saying that maybe we need to calm down because there is so much charged energy and heightened chaos that maybe we need to calm down as well and rethink what does it mean to be the greatest of all time. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I've always wanted the work to have that strange sort of dichotomy of, the dark and the funny. And even within the goats, the goats look goofy and they're somewhat funny in moments. In other moments, when you look at them, they look a little malicious. And all of the goats, just one say, I will say this because we didn't mention this, that all of the goats have rebar coming out of their back, the back side, their back. And the rebar, for me, people think it's an impalement, but it's really meant to be a symbol of potentiality because a lot of the rebars have from fire hose to feathers to they're painted gold. So they is a way to bring in objects and symbols and gestures that conjure the viewer to their own experiences. So it's really about that idea of incorporating in this one repeated motif, the goat, all these possibilities as well.
So just tell us a little bit more about Socrates in the sense that I think it's been like now maybe 3 or 4 years you've had a new executive director. And so the direction of the site has changed a bit. And so tell us a little bit more because I think you've kind of reinvigorated the space quite a bit.
I mean, that's what we're trying to do. And bringing in Nari was, I think, the best way to do it. It's been sort of a while coming. We last year celebrated our 30th anniversary. So, that's kind of a moment of reflection. I would say the program had been changing over the years, sort of evolving slowly from mainly presenting younger artists in group shows to starting to support more mid-career, more established artists, some who had been overlooked, and giving them a lot of support and doing really large-scale projects. And, when we were thinking about, okay, it's ready to do a single artist show, who can do it? Nari immediately came to mind.
That's nice.
Not only as someone who could produce something in scale, but we really wanted it to be an exhibition, not a single piece, but to have someone say something through the juxtaposition of different works. And I'd seen that in Nari's work from some of his shows, in galleries here, the Live Support show and the Liberty and Order show that are almost essayistic. He's taking on an urgent topic of the time and making works that speak to that topic in different ways. And that was sort of what we hoped for and what Nari did, and beyond our expectations.
Oh, that's great. No, Nari is hot these days.
Savona, don't say that. It's frightening when you hear it.
Okay. I'm going to say...
because hot means you will cool off anytime.
No. I don't see you cooling off, so let me find another way to describe it. Let's just say you're very popular right now. Nari's one of the most popular artists in America right now. I mean, come on. You got Creative Time showing your breathing flag after that tumultuous incident in Charlottesville, to make a real poignant statement about what is happening in this country and the controversies that are taking place. And then We the People got picked up by the New York Historical Society. I was impressed, Nari, when I saw it. I saw it in the gallery, but then when I saw it at the New York Historical Society, I was like, look at Nari. He's doing quite well. But no, I think that's one of your strengths. Your strengths is you know how to convey what's going on in certain time periods and tell a story with it. Because that's really what you're doing. You're telling a story and you're asking people to delve in so that they can understand what you're trying to do, what you're trying to convey. Because there's a lot that's there. It's not, very superficial. It's deep. And wouldn't you agree, Jess, that that's what Nari is trying to do?
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that was why he was such a great match for us as a public art institution, because he has so much generosity with the work, in that everything's layered and complex. But I think the work invites many different narratives and stories and associations. And Nari brings his own, understandings and experiences to the work, but also encourages others to. And to have that kind of work in the public that opens itself up to interpretation is really important to have in the public sphere.
Yes, because I think now what's happening is that with all these controversies that are going on, I kind of agree with some people that you don't want to get rid of all of these sculptures and statues that are out there that's across the country. But what I really want is the new narrative that kind of tells the truth about the people and the movements and the times, because you need to correct that, because that's what's really at the heart of all of these problems, is that people don't know history. And so what they think is the truth is not necessarily the truth. And that's why I like this show, Greatest of All Time, because you're saying politically that that's what we're dealing with. Someone who's constantly saying fake news, somebody who's always discrediting the media, someone who's challenging anyone that goes against any, shenanigans or fantasies that people may come up with so that they can make themselves appear like they're better than other people, that hubris coming back again. So this ties in quite well with Labor Day and the fact that we have to look at our country, and because there were many movements to fight against, mistreatment of all kinds of people. So therefore we can have a better union. We just don't say it. We actually do it. So I want to thank you guys for joining us. I know it's a Labor Day weekend where people are off and running, but I'm glad you were able to stop in, Jess. It was a pleasure to finally meet you.
Likewise.
And Nari, I know I'll see you in Harlem getting some coffee. Yes, in the neighborhood. So I just want to thank the two of you for joining us. This was indeed a pleasure, and enjoy.
Thank you so much. It was great to speak to you. And thanks, Jess.
No, go ahead, Jess.
And please see the show before it closes on Labor Day.
Okay.
Run, do not walk.
Yes. Okay. In Astoria.
In Astoria.
All right. Thank you both.
Thanks, guys. Take care now.
All right. Bye-bye. And we are back with State of the Arts NYC, where we cover art. And we just had on the show Jess Wilcox, who is the director of exhibitions for Socrates Sculpture Park. And returning was Nari Ward. Nari Ward is an amazing artist who is like really on fire these days across the country, at Socrates, at the New York Historical Society, with Creative Time, where they have his breathing flag in about 6 different museums across the country to answer to all the uproar that has been going on in Charlottesville. And so I just wanted to, have him on the show to tell us a lot about G.O.A.T. again. And that is an acronym for the greatest of all time, so that we could deal with and talk about the politics that we're all experiencing right now. We're moving forward with our next segment, and we're going to be bringing on a young woman who I have admired for quite some time, and that is Jenny Sabin. Jenny, are you there?
I am. I'm here.
Thank you
so much for having me on.
Oh, thank you. And Jenny was the winner this year for the Museum of Modern Art's PS1 Young Architects Program. And, that's quite a feat. Many of you may or may not be aware of the fact that every summer, PS1 in Long Island City has a major competition, and they use the large courtyard that's attached to the old public school building, and they make that into a major public space, and usually with some sort of canopy that's used to also stage music, dance, and light. And Jenny won, and she's an assistant professor in the area of design and emerging technologies in architecture at Cornell University. She holds degrees in ceramics and interdisciplinary visual arts from the University of Washington and a master's of architecture from the University of Pennsylvania, where she was awarded the AIA Henry Adams First Prize Medal. So, Jenny, you're quite accomplished. Tell us, how do you feel about your work being at PS1?
Oh, it's an incredible honor to win the competition. As you know, it's, probably the only competition of its kind that really allows for emerging architects to move experimental work into scales and multiple publics that, really just wouldn't be possible without the framework and structure and support that they provide, through the Young Architects program. So, and, it's an intense competition. The finalists, all the projects were amazing. And so I just was thrilled and really, really honored to take part and to have the opportunity to take the project on.
And I was also happy that a woman won the prize. Things are changing. Competitions are becoming more inclusive, and people of all different backgrounds and influences are getting their voices heard. But still, I am very supportive of seeing women win competitions because it's it's a pretty big deal. It's not just about developing a design. It's about realizing it, and that takes money. That takes sometimes sponsors. Sometimes that takes the support of educational institutions, and women still struggle in those areas to realize their vision. So I'm very happy that a woman won the competition this year, and you have a design studio as well, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Jenny Sabin Studio.
So therefore, you can do other types of projects that can help you and your studio financially and helping students out academically as well.
Yeah, that's very true. I wear three integrated hats, really. One as an educator, teaching design studios and seminars at Cornell University, both in our professional B.Art program and our M.Arch program, as well as overseeing our post-professional program as Director of Graduate Studies. So teaching is, a big primary thing that I do, and I think, while the projects and my research excite me and keep me going and, moving from one day to the next, I really think the biggest impact that I'm making in the long term is through my teaching and getting students to think a little bit differently. And the projects that I take on in my studio practice, such as Lumen for MoMA and MoMA PS1's YAP, allow for me to provide opportunities to students, to work on these exciting projects. So it's not just about winning the competition. It's about extending these experiences, to multiple people. And my second hat is as principal of Jenny Sabin Studio, which really allows me to push my ongoing research and teaching into application, such as through projects like Lumen. And then my third hat is as director of the Sabin Design Lab, which is housed within the College of Architecture, Art, and Planning, where I collaborate with a number of scientists on projects that are primarily funded by the National Science Foundation, and we together collaboratively across disciplinary boundaries innovate new materials and digital fabrication protocols with an interest in thinking about how architecture can become more adaptive. And, one of the questions that really drives a lot of the work, both the teaching, the research, and my applied projects, is to begin to consider how architecture could perhaps behave more like an organism, responding to and adapting to environmental changes and contexts, and importantly, always placing the human at the center of that. And I think Lumen, for me, really embraces all of those ideas, and I think this exemplifies, over a decade of work across disciplines, both in the teaching and in the research that I do with my collaborators.
Yes, that's the area that I was most excited about. Seeing how architecture is being transformed and looking into the future and how it could adapt, almost like smart living. So therefore, we could deal with elements that we're dealing with today, like that terrible hurricane that took place in Texas. Who knows what we might be able to do to help deal with rising sea levels or dealing with droughts, when we might be thinking about cooling buildings and bringing in systems that could alleviate those problems, or dealing with something that's dear to my heart, growing plants and food onto buildings, vertical gardens, and that could be a way of dealing with other economic and environmental issues as well, that we have the ability, we have the technology, so therefore we can integrate all of these possibilities in new cities, or revitalize older cities to make them more effective and efficient for growing populations, because you're getting more and more people now coming into cities, leaving rural areas. And so we do need to figure out, how do we, help each other so that we can survive on this blue planet. So I thought this was great. I thought this was fascinating. And so tell us, what do you hope to do with all of that material that's from Lumens after PS1?
Yeah, certainly. And also I'd love to respond to some of the things that you just mentioned, because I think the spirit of Lumen is really in embracing adaptive architecture and change, and thinking about how the human is front and center within that. It's really about a collective, and I think the only way we're going to begin to address the crises that we face, both climactic, social, political, and beyond, is to really bring together people from multiple disciplines and backgrounds and experiences to the table. And while my expertise by no means is in sustainability or urban planning or city planning, we end up touching those issues through other means. And it's really about a process of designing and thinking that's about relationships and processes and systems, and sometimes quite specifically looking at particular models found in biology and cellular biology, the resiliency that they provide as a kind of powerful ecological way of thinking. And so Lumen is really a synthesis of that. And specifically, to address your question, the material system is composed of two large canopies, and there's over 1 million yards of fiber that is digitally knitted. Each of the cells and conical stalactite forms have been individually digitally knit with a collaborator, a company called Shima Siki, and they include two high-tech responsive fibers. One is solar active, so it changes subtly its color throughout the day in the presence of the sun. And the other is photoluminescent. And what's happening during the day with the photoluminescent yarns is that they're absorbing energy. And at night, when the sun goes away, that energy source goes away, they release light, hence the phrase knitted light. And so the color change and the transformations that take place throughout the day are really about the structure of the material itself and how it's designed, but also in the ways that people interact with it. So, adaptation and materiality are really something that's about interaction that's co-produced. And that really excites me to see people interact with the project and to use it in various ways. And I think was a really important part of it, that my response to the brief that Sean Anderson with MoMA put out there was to address topics such as transformation and materiality, but importantly, to think about how the project would really engage the multiple programs throughout the week at MoMA PS1, and importantly, warm up on Saturdays, when 4,000 to 7,000 people come to dance to various amazing DJs.
Yeah, they really party.
Yeah, they do. But it's been so great to see how people use Lumen, whether it's having a kind of private moment, eating lunch with one's family, or dancing inside the cones, or coming at night and seeing the fibers change. It really is it's a participatory architecture, and that's I'm just so pleased with how it's turned out. And so the smaller canopy may be exhibited a second time. That's sort of in conversation. And the steel that makes up the three towers, the Tensegrity Towers, which were approximately 45 feet tall, that I worked closely with Arup Engineering on, with Clayton Binkley. We're going to recycle all of that, so that will be scrapped. And the spool stools are actually up for sale currently. So if you're interested in some of the seating that peppered the courtyards, that you'll have an opportunity to actually purchase one of those through my website. And each one of those is composed of a recycled spool that has been deconstructed and then woven with a microcord robotically.
Well, I just want
to... So there are many parts to the project, and they'll find various homes, whether it's having a new life in a different exhibit, or going into people's homes and decks and gardens, or being recycled.
Well, I wanted to let people know as well that this month, September, is New York Textile Month, and your installation is being spotlighted because of your use of materials, particularly the digitally knitted canopy. And I was fascinated by that, too, because I knit. And basically, not very fancy, but it's the whole concept and the process of knitting and how it's transformative for the people who engage in it, no different than those who engage in quilting. We had an artist with us last week, Sherry Lynn Wood, to talk about quilts, and we had a team Otun talking to us about African textile and the variations of it. So therefore, people would have a closer connection to the fabrics that they use for a variety of uses. So I was very excited about the whole thing. It was about architecture. It was about art. It was about craft. It was about science. And I think sometimes people underestimate the importance of the creative arts. It's called the creative arts for a reason, for a purpose. It's integrative, it's collaborative, it's innovative, and we can use it for today. It's not something far off that you just view, but something that you can actually engage in. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us, Jenny. It's been such a pleasure having you on to the show and discussing everything that you have been doing at PS1. It's not that far away for folks if they're interested. How long will it still be up at PS1?
Yeah, so if you haven't had a chance to see it, it is on view through this weekend through Monday, September 4th. Mm-hmm. And the final warm-up is this Saturday, the museum is open till 9 p.m. with an incredible array of DJs and musicians. And it also is an opportunity to see Lumen at night. So please come by and see the project and enjoy MoMA PS1. And it's really a pleasure to join you today. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so very, very much. So have a great weekend, and we'll see you another time. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks again.
Bye-bye. And we're back with State of the Arts NYC, where we cover art. And we just had Jenny Sabin on our show. She was the winner of the Museum of Modern Arts PS1 Young Architects Program. And her project, Lumen, is the spotlighted architectural installation for this year. You still have a chance to see it this weekend. So now we bring with us the co-founders of the Brooklyn Clay Tour. And I was very excited. I received this email, and I said, wait a minute, from Arts Gowanus. And I'm reading this very long email, and I said, wait a minute, Brooklyn, Clay Tour. What is this all about? So I rushed and contacted Nicholas and Demetria right away, and they accommodated me very quickly so they could tell us about their inaugural. This is your inaugural tour. So why don't the two of you tell us a little bit about it? Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Nicholas and I about a year ago met for the first time, and Nicholas mentioned something to me about a clay tour. Mm-hmm. And immediately my eyes lit up, and I thought, that's exactly something I'm interested in, and I feel like we in Brooklyn would be very much interested in. And there's been a lot of popularity in ceramics, but there's also a history in Brooklyn of ceramics. In fact, we're on the tour going to be having a walking tour of Pottery Hill, which was the first home place of porcelain in America.
Wow.
So there's a history in this city, and we wanted to share that diversity in history and the growth and popularity today in what's happening in our neighborhoods and around us.
So are the two of you both ceramicists?
Yes, we both been studying and making and selling in New York and in Brooklyn, and we saw the open studios like Open Gowanus as a perfect model where the common theme there is location, but what we saw in the ceramics community, what our common theme is our material. So that was what we're really trying to promote and see how we can create some interesting events for the broader Brooklyn community.
Well, it's I don't know if you know this, but I curate art, and one of the artists I presented, it was a ceramics piece. It weighed 600 pounds. Wow. To my dying days, I will never forget that. So it weighed 600 pounds, and it was beautiful. It was absolutely stunning. So I do have an appreciation, and there's not that many kilns in New York City, and it seems like Brooklyn has the largest supply of kilns in the city. I know Queens may have a few, but it's really
there's
Brooklyn.
no official count. I think it has to do with the creative energy here in Brooklyn, and there's a little bit more space in Manhattan, but that's getting tighter and tighter every day. And there is a kind of like you could set up a kiln, a very small one in your basement or in a small studio, and there is a good amount of studio space here. But then there are maybe a handful I could think of in Brooklyn that are large gas kilns, and that's something that's really unique to have in the city. And because of that, a lot of the work that we see coming out of Brooklyn and why it's unique to Brooklyn and not the rest of the country is that it's electric fired. So we're using a lot of electricity. And so that really starts to dictate what the look is of the pottery and the ceramics and the sculpture that's coming out of this area.
That's interesting. Now, how many artists, Demetria, are participating in this tour?
At this point, we have over 250 artists.
Really?
And we have over 30 events on
It's
the tour.
growing every day. There'll probably be more by the end of the day.
Past our expectations completely for the first year. We're thrilled by the support and the interest and the number of people that have really jumped on board.
Well,
it's all artist run.
It's because people are looking at ceramics differently, too. It's not just about being a craft. It's about being an art form. I was just visiting a gallery, taking some people to the Upper East Side to the Joan B. Mervis Gallery to see contemporary Japanese ceramics. The works are stunning. They're absolutely beautiful. From one artist, everything was already sold. The show hasn't
that's
opened.
a good show.
Impressive.
And it's sold. So it's like people are understanding the value. It was all about the materials. One of the curators was telling me about the celadon, because they were Asian artists. And I said, I'm very familiar with that. She was shocked that I knew. And then it was because we had the China Institute last year on our show this time of year. They gave us, and even some listeners, I'm hoping some listeners remembered, to the China Institute. It was magnificent to see, these ancient works. But it was all about, like you said, the materials, the colors, all these things matter. So what do you think is spurring also some of the excitement again in Brooklyn? Is it the number of artists that are here? That's
the debate that we're hoping to use the tour to explore. And there's this conversation that's going on. We meet people that are from outside the city, editors and folks that kind of follow the arts, and they say, what's going on in Brooklyn? Why is ceramics having a moment there? And why does it look so different than what's going on in the rest of the country? And so we're not trying to answer that, but what we're trying to do is create an opportunity for people to explore that. We all have our own theories, but it's not going to come down to one answer.
Okay. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. And just to let you know, I would love to keep up with you guys because for the last 2 years, I have been supporting the Ceramics and Glass Fair that takes place in January.
That's a good one.
It's a fabulous, fabulous art fair. And one of the things that I would like to help you guys with is having more panel discussions.
Yes.
Because that's one of the things. They get a lot of people who are coming into the city, but there's not a lot of local ceramics artists, and I really would like to do that because we're getting a lot of new people coming into the city, young people, and they're thinking about collecting, but they don't know and they don't understand. But I find that when you have those moments where people can meet an artist, it changes everything, don't you think?
It's the connection.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're trying to do is create an opportunity for the local neighborhoods to meet the artists that are right in their neighborhoods and have that human connection because we follow each other on Instagram and on social media and we see work in the magazines, but it's not until you meet the artists and you realize, hey, this is a person just like me and they have different ideas and here's a dialogue that we can have by looking at their work and I can respond. That's when it becomes special. And so that's kind of the root of what we're trying to do is push out this art or arts festival, push it out and decentralize it so it's in all the neighborhoods.
Okay.
And we look at the map and we realize that there's still a lot of parts of Brooklyn that aren't being represented. And so this being year one, we know there's room for growth for year 2 and 3, so we can try to reach more and more of our local community.
Okay. Now, Demetria, give us the website so people can find about all these events.
It's www.brooklynclaytour.com, and our Instagram is also at @BrooklynClayTour.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for accommodating me at the very last minute.
Well, thanks for
I'm
being
trying to
having
come
us.
to one of your demonstrations.
Oh, good.
I'm trying. I'm also doing Brooklyn, taste talks at the same time, but I'm going to try. But thank you so very much, and it was a pleasure having you both.
Thank you.
Pleasure to
Pleasure's
be
ours.
And we are back, and we are now going to have our museum review by Irene Javors.
This is Irene Javors at the Museum Edge. Today we are visiting an extremely interesting exhibit at the Museum of the City of New York titled Posters and Patriotism, Selling World War I in New York City. The exhibit runs through October 9th, 2017. On April 16, 1917, the United States declared war on Germany. The Great War, as it is referred to, now included America. This was the USA's first major military intervention outside this side of the Atlantic Ocean. America abandoned its neutrality and went forward to total mobilization for the war effort. However, selling the war to Americans was not easy. Many Americans wanted to stay out of European affairs. The challenge that confronted Washington was how to sell the war to America. New York City became the great think tank of propaganda designed to sell the war to the American public. This exhibit is filled with wall-to-wall posters, newspapers, magazines, handouts, music books, and other ephemera depicting the advertisements designed to sell the war effort. There are posters directed toward women, different ethnicities and religions, laborers, farmers, and African Americans, all encouraging them to do their part to win the war. Also depicted are anti-war materials from Emma Goldman's Mother Earth Journal and the journal The Liberator. Included in the exhibit are selections from Charlie Chaplin's silent short, The Bond, from 1918, promoting the Fourth Liberty Loan Drive. A bit of trivia. New York State granted women the right to vote in 1917. One might speculate their involvement in the war effort helped to make this happen before the passage of the Women's Suffrage Amendment in 1920. The exhibit is at the Museum of the City of New York, 103rd Street and 5th Avenue until October 9th. This is Irene Javors for State of the Arts, New York City, WBAI FM.
And we are back with State of the Arts. We're going to wrap up our show this week. We had a great time with wonderful people. Nari, Jess Wilcox, Jenny Sabin, Demetria, Clappo, and Nicholas Newcomb. We have more for you next week. It's going to be a hot show. So thank you so much. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend. Bye-bye.
WBAI is an important, vital New York City institution.
New York State Assembly member Richard Godfried speaking out on the station's dispute with Empire State Realty Trust over the lease which houses our transmitter.
Now, I don't expect the real estate folks that own the Empire State Building to think that they're in the business of making charitable contributions to WBAI. But I do expect them to be good citizens. You know, the New York metropolitan area is very good to the Empire State Building. The Empire State Building should give back a little to the metropolitan area. and helping to keep WBAI alive, I believe, is a reasonable piece of their corporate responsibility. So I say to the Empire State Building, you're part of New York. Do the right thing as New Yorkers.
And you can do the right thing with your pledge by entering 41444 on your smartphone and then text TRANSMIT 995. Again, that's 41444 and TRANSMIT 995. Many thanks.
Thank you.
In commemoration of the West Indian American Day Carnival Association's 50th annual parade of the bands on Eastern Parkway in Brooklyn, WBAI is proud to stream this carnival live and direct on 99.5 FM and WBAI.org. Events kick off from the grounds of the Brooklyn Museum beginning Thursday, August 31st through Labor Day, Monday, September 4th. WBAI will cover the Stay in School concert on Friday, September 1st at 11 a.m., the Kiddies Carnival on Saturday, September 2nd at 9 a.m., and Charlie Blocko's on Fulton Street and Nostrand Avenue from 3 p.m. For more information, please visit WBAI.org or visit WIADCAcarnival.org.
This is your WBAI Community Bulletin Board with announcements of upcoming events. I'm Earthmom. On Saturday, September 2nd, VVAW, the Vietnam Veterans Against the War, invite you to see Winter Soldier, a film where 125 vets from the war in Vietnam came together to heal a nation and themselves, risking everything, careers, friendships, and family, as they openly discussed the atrocities they committed while serving in Vietnam. They saw themselves as winter soldiers battling the wrongs of the war and the brutal training that had made them capable of unthinkable violence. This is a free screening, and it's at 7 p.m. at the Anthology Film Archive, located at the corner of 2nd Avenue and 2nd Street in Manhattan. For more information, go to anthologyfilmarchive.org or call 212-226-2462. On Thursday, September 7th, Brooklyn for Peace is presenting a forum entitled Ugly Head of Extremism, From USA to Europe to India. What extremism? Religious, political, social, cultural, or economic? Or all of the above? How can we fight back? The speaker is Dr. Pratha Banerjee, human rights activist, immigration rights lawyer, and labor educator. The time is 7 p.m. and the location is the Brooklyn Commons, located at 388 Atlantic Avenue between Hoyt and Bond Streets in downtown Brooklyn. The program is free and the venue is wheelchair accessible. Go to brooklynpeace.org for more information or call 718-624-9521. On September 17th, the WBAI Community Advisory Board, the CAB, will hold its regular monthly meeting from 1 to 3 p.m. in the atrium of the lobby of the Deutsche Bank building at 60 Wall Street in Lower Manhattan. The CAB is a volunteer group of interested listeners who meet monthly to gather public comments and ideas as to whether the programming and policies of the station meet the specialized needs of the tri-state area that it serves. All are welcomed and encouraged to attend. That's Sunday, September 17th, 1 to 3 p.m. at the Atrium Lobby at 60 Wall Street. This has been your WBAI Community Bulletin Board. If you have an event you would like us to announce, send it 2 weeks in advance to cbb@wbai.org.
And once again, this is WBAI New York, 99.5 FM, and WBAI.org on the web. This is a listener-sponsored community radio station providing you a Pacifica state of mind since 1960. The previous program was State of the Arts NYC, hosted and produced by Savona Bailey-McClain, heard Fridays at 5 p.m. Stay tuned for Radio GBE coming up during the 6 o'clock hour. And I just wanted to let people know once again that since we are in the Labor Day weekend, we will be giving reports throughout the weekend, and eventually dedicate a lot of the programming in Monday for the Labor Day, West Indy Labor Day Carnival. And somewhere like during the top of the hour, we'll be announcing what individual is there, so they'll give you some of the highlights that are happening there, and maybe you can attend yourself and enjoy all the fun that's happening during the Labor Day, West Indy Labor Day Carnival. And just keep it locked here, WBAI. I know there will be some announcements between the hours